Hello, all you baseball fans, and welcome to episode 1 of There Is No Such Thing as a Prospects podcast. I am your host, Mike Roach, and I am very excited for you to be here today on the inaugural episode of which hopefully goes on to be a very long and exciting podcast. This is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm really excited for you to be listening because I've been planning about this, I've been thinking about this, I've been working on this podcast for a very long time, and it is my great pleasure to finally make this show a reality, and I'm happy that you are here listening with me today, so thank you for that. Since it is episode 1, let me give you a little bit of personal introduction for myself. Like I said, my name is Mike Roach. On Twitter, you might be familiar with me. I go by MJR Sports Cards, and I have been part of the card collecting community for the last 10 plus years. I started collecting as a kid, as many of us do, and I had a break between high school and college, again, as many of us do, and I got back in 2011, and I specifically remember getting back in 2011. That was the year I decided to start dabbling in baseball cards again, and I did that by deciding to put together a complete set of 2011 Topps. Since I didn't know what else I was doing, I figured set collecting would be a good way to kind of ease back into it. So I did Topps Series 1. I put together all the cards. I did Topps Series 2. I found all the cards and plus some variations and short prints and everything. And then Topps Update was released. And I decided that I'd had enough of that. I decided Series 1, Series 2 was good enough. Update, I don't need to worry about that. That just seems like way too many cards. And that's, of course, a decision I've been kicking myself in the butt for the last decade, obviously, because not only was the famous Mike Trout rookie card in Topps Update, there was also a whole lot of other cards, obviously Jose Altuve, off the top of my head, Anthony Rizzo, arguably one of the most classic modern-day sets that Topps has ever put out, I would argue, and I decided not to do it because Series 1 and 2 was enough. And that was my first experience with baseball cards. So that's definitely something that I've been kicking myself for in the butt for a long time. But since then, I've dabbled in a lot of other mediums of collecting. I've gotten into player collecting. I started to put together a Ron Santo PC because I grew up as a Cubs fan. I grew up listening to Ron on the radio, and he was one of the best radio announcers of all time, in my opinion. Of course, I'm a little biased. Like I said, grew up a Cubs fan, and I will give it to you. He was a very big homer, but that's what made listening to him fun. And because of that, I decided to do a PC of him. So I've still got a couple of vintage cards. You know, his 1961 Topps rookie card is one of my favorite cards of all time. I'm lucky enough to have a couple of them in my collection, and they're very valuable, each and every one to me. I've also dabbled in set collecting, like I said, 2011 Topps Series 1, Series 2, a little bit of update, but some other modern sets from there. I got really into Topps Archives when it was first released. That was one of my favorite sets. Not so much anymore. It's kind of fallen off in my opinion, but I've also done some vintage set collecting too. I'm currently working on a 1951 Bowman set that I'm dubious that I will ever completely finish because of some of the cards obviously in there, Mickey Mantle being one of them, but it's still fun putting together that vintage set. I've also even gotten into tobacco cards, specifically T205 Chicago Cubs. Another one of my collecting goals is putting together every Chicago Cub featured in the T205 set, and I have to say I'm pretty close. I'm only a couple off. So hopefully I'll be finishing that one up soon, but that's another one I've been working on for a few years. In addition to the T202 Chicago Cubs. That one I haven't been pursuing as strenuously, but when I'm able to pick some up here or there, I have. So, in the 10 years since I first got back into collecting, I've dabbled in a lot of different stuff. I've got a lot of different experience, and I've kind of seen how the community has reacted to a lot of different things. I've seen trends come and go. I've seen players come and go, and I've seen collectors come and go. So that's why I feel like I'm a good person to be able to host a collecting podcast with my knowledge and experience that I want to pass on to you. But one thing that I have never done, up until recently that is, has been prospecting. And prospecting has been something that's been part of the card collecting community for a long time, actually. It's gotten much more popular in recent years as we have had an influx of new collectors, which is great, but it's something that's always been there, and it's something that's always fascinated me, really. Whether I'm on Twitter, Reddit, back in the day, being on the forums, Blowout Cards, Net54, Sports Card Forum, all those guys, I've seen people post about these prospects and, buying these minor league players and coming up with, big collections eventually. And I've always kind of wondered, I've sat back and wondered, man, how do they do that? How do they find these players? How can I do it? How do I identify which players are going to be good, buy them for pennies on the dollar, it seems, and then, a few years later, 1, 2, 3 years later, all of a sudden, I've got this magnificent Clayton Kershaw collection, or, name your star, Jose Altuve, Mike Trout, these guys who seemingly come out of nowhere, but these collectors post about it, and they always know just who to go after, it seemed. So I watched that with great fascination, wanting to step in, but, like many of you, I'm sure, a little bit intimidated by one big aspect of it. I'm sure you can guess what that is. Money. That's our greatest limitation for all of us collectors, I think, is just money. And especially when it comes to prospecting, it can be very intimidating because there's a lot of money that gets thrown around. You get these parallels, these numbered, colored parallels. You get these PSA 10s back in the day. You get the BGS 9.5s, the BGS 10s, black labels. And it's not hundreds of dollars. It's thousands of dollars that are getting thrown around. I saw the other day Jason Dominguez card, 1/1 Superfractor, PSA 10, I think it was, on Golden Auctions. And it was bid up to $21,000, I think. And from an outsider's perspective, that's very intimidating. How can you spend $20,000 on a card of a guy who hasn't even reached the majors yet? It seems crazy. So, I don't want to invest all this money in these guys who might not even make it. But I'm here to reassure you, after I've done my research, I've looked into it, I've spent the last year and a half, 2 years really getting to know the prospect market, and I'm here to tell you that money is not the most important thing when it comes to prospecting. Whether you're entering prospecting with $10, whether you're entering with $100, or if you've got $100,000, money is not the most important thing when it comes to prospecting. The most important thing when it comes to prospecting is knowledge. You got to know, who should I be looking at? Where do I find these players? What type of players? Where should I buy and sell? Who should I buy and sell? And of course, the most important question, how much should I be buying and selling these guys for right now? So that's what I set out to find out. And that's why I launched my Twitter handle, MJR Sports Cards. And I got off to a start just creating these charts that I would make on just Google Sheets, just tracking eBay sales of all these cards, all these guys, and seeing how their prices ebb and flow. And I tweeted that out because, as I was getting into prospecting, it's a big community and it's a great community, but there's no one place to find all this knowledge, and it's kind of frustrating at times. Even if you know who to look at, there's no price guide. One of the biggest complaints with Beckett, it's only up to date so much, and the prospect market can change like that. So there's no one place to go to see how much these guys should be selling for. So that's what I set out to provide. I set out to provide a service that collectors could go to and see just in one place how much, what a certain player's prospect market is like. And now I'm very excited to bring that to you in podcast form, in audio form. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the journey. because these questions can be difficult to answer, and I hope I'm able to help you out on that, because that's really what it's all about when it comes to collecting, when it comes to prospecting. It's about the community and helping each other out, and I hope I'm able to do that. So I hope you join along on this podcast. I hope you join along for future episodes. And hopefully, we can dig up some of these more obscure guys. Hopefully, we can get the best value out of our collection and, share a few stories along the way. So I'm really excited to see where this podcast goes. I'm really excited for you to come along, and I'm really excited to talk to a couple of really interesting people along the way. On that note, I'd like to move on to this episode's guest. He's a guy that's been collecting for a long time and has been around in the hobby for a long time, and because of that has a very interesting perspective and a very unique perspective in the hobby today. But he definitely knows a lot about cards, he has a deep knowledge of collecting, and he has a really good knowledge of prospects as well, which is why I brought him on. It was a lot of fun. I felt like we could have talked for hours, but we didn't. I'll have to have him back on at a later date to have another conversation, but it was just really interesting, really fun, and I think you're going to have a good time listening.
What do you say, Cumming? We're going to do this today?
Do what?
For my very first guest on There Is No Such Thing as a Prospects podcast, I am very lucky to be joined by someone who has been in the collecting community for a very long time, 1978, it says on his bio, and currently he is the founder, creator, and Red Sox correspondent for Prospects 1500, a website I very much recommend using, and just someone who I look up to and see as a mentor in the collecting and prospecting community. So it is my great pleasure to introduce guest number one, Scott Greene. Scott, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you having me on, being your first guest. And you mentioning when I started collecting kind of dates myself, but that's okay.
Sorry about that. Hopefully it's not too bad, but I wanted to bring that up because, you've been collecting for such a long time. When I read that in your bio, I was really impressed because obviously the collecting hobby, the community has changed a lot over those years. And I was hoping to get your perspective on how much the hobby has changed, some of the changes you've seen, and kind of your thoughts on collecting now versus when you first started.
Oh, sure. I'll have a few things to say about that. I've been outspoken before, especially on social media. I guess I'll try to not hold back here too. But yeah, and over 40 years, I was 7 years old when my dad took me down to a little store called Christie's Market in Burlington, Massachusetts on a Sunday morning to get the Boston Sunday Globe. And he said, "Hey, you want to get a pack of baseball cards?" And so he got one for him, he got one for me, and we went home and we opened the packs. And I was just getting into watching baseball. I didn't know all the players on the Red Sox at the time, but that's the team my dad watched and my grandfather watched. So, I became a fan, and then I just really fell in love with the mini pieces of cardboard, and we tried to build the set that first summer just by buying packs every Sunday morning. So that brings back a lot of good memories, and that's how I got into collecting.
I love the distinct memory of first getting into it because I think all of us as collectors can remember like that first pack that or whoever it was that got us into the hobby. I remember I have a similar story for my birthday in 1998, my 6th birthday, dating myself there. My aunt was the first one to give me a pack of baseball cards, and she gave me 3 packs of baseball cards, and she told me that my cousin was very upset that she was giving me those cards because God forbid there might be a Sammy Sosa or Mark McGwire in there. Lucky for him, there was not, but it's kind of the similar thing. It's something I look back on and be like, that's what got me in. It kind of sounds like the same with you, with your dad, is you can so distinctly point back and say like, yeah, that's when I first started. That's when I got hooked.
Oh man, I remember, I don't remember the guys, the players in the first pack of cards. You know, there's no way I'd remember that, but
Right.
I remember what the packs looked like. I remember the actual shoebox that I kept them in. I remember getting down to needing only a certain number of cards and asking my mom if she would help me find a store locally that we could go to and get the final cards I needed to complete the set. And I remember doing that for a couple years. Oh, you know, and then I think I had a friend who collected cards the next year in 1979. So we were able to do some trades, and I remember getting some cards from him that I needed to complete my set. And then in 1980, it was amazing because I found out, like, through mail order, I could get a set that was complete in a box and have all 726 cards from the top set and not have to go and buy packs every week. It was an epiphany. And I found that, like, in a baseball card magazine, I think it was. So yeah, I'd mail away to some guy in Indiana or Michigan, and then I get this box of cards sent to me. It was like nothing I had ever dreamed about. And how innocent we were back then, because there was nothing like a grading company.
Right.
There was nothing like eBay. It was just collecting for the love of the hobby. And I have tried to continue that love and collecting, buying cards and collecting and trading to this day through my breaks and through my social media. And I am not one that gets into, grading and selling a lot. And we can go over all that later, but it just does bring back a lot of memories.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, back then it was such a different thing, and not that I was around in the 70s and 80s, but it stands out to me that you tried to collect the set, you tried to put the set together through buying packs, begging your mom to go to the store and trading with your friends. And it's such a different thing today, like you said, with eBay and everything, where if you're trying to complete a set, well, number one, good luck with all the variations and everything. But number two, like, it's so easy just to go online and just say, oh, this is the card I need. Boom, I got it. And I don't know, in your mind, do you think that takes away a little bit, or just kind of a different perspective, or what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a different perspective. I mean, you could get packs way back then for, they were a quarter, 40
Yeah.
cents, 50 cents. And now if you go into any place that's going to have single packs, well, the single packs are coming out of a box. They're coming out of a hobby box or a jumbo box that someone bought for hundreds of dollars. Or if you're lucky, you're and those packs, by the way, are going to be $5, $10, even more, so you could buy a jumbo pack of Tops or Bowman, and it might be 25, $30, depending on what the store is going to sell it for based on what they need to make a profit on from the box. But it's just so completely different. And yeah, I was out of the hobby probably for a good 7-8 years while I was in college, and then after I got out of college and was working, getting started in my career. But then actually around the late 90s, early 2000s, when I got married, I kind of got back into it to have a hobby on the side. And I went back and filled in the years of top sets that I didn't really get between my time away in college and getting into the work world. But, I've been going full force again with my collecting since 2000.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think that's a unique story right there. I feel like all of us, myself included, definitely kind of hit that lull around high school, college, when you're kind of growing up a little bit, getting away from quote unquote childish things, and then one way or the other, we all fall back into it. One thing I wanted to ask you about, kind of going back to what you said the hobby used to be like. I was listening to one of the Prospect 1500 podcasts the other day, and going back doing my research, and you were talking about your hobby family and how you've got a very tight group of collectors. And one of the things that stood out to me is when you were talking about them is that you guys would trade back and forth. You know each other's PCs, and if you pull a card from one of their guys' PCs, you send it to them or trade it to them for something that they have of yours. So can you tell me a little bit about your hobby family? Like, who is it? How did you get started? How'd you meet those guys? And just kind of the community around that.
Well, it's very super secret, Mike. So I don't know how much I can divulge here. Actually, I pulled two Aaron Zavala first Bowman autographs, one being a green numbered to 99 and the other being a base. And I know that they're going right to my buddy who's a Rangers fan, and he just happened to have a Marcelo Meyer Ray Wave refractor. So, I mean, there's a trade, boom, done, and we're both happy. And we're not looking to, make that big sale. And yeah, could he have sold the Marcelo for like $200? Maybe. Could I have, put the Zavala, green first on eBay and gotten $150? Maybe, but that's just not what we think about. We're close buddies. So I started doing some card breaks. And if you're listening and you don't know what that is, basically, someone opens up baseball cards, whether it's packs or a box or a case, whatever it might be, and you're doing it live, usually on camera, and they're all different formats where people can join the break by buying in and picking a team, or sometimes it's a random team, or sometimes they're all different formats. I've done some auctions where I put every single player on my website and people can bid on the player and how much they want to bid on. And then out of a case, every single card of that player, that person gets. So there's all different formats. So I started doing breaks really just to share my love of the hobby and to share the cards that I was opening, probably back in early 2019, maybe it was late 2018. I can't really remember exactly. I was just doing some things live on Twitter, started to build up a little bit of a following. And then it was definitely sometime in late, maybe fall 2019, where a friend of mine, I'll give him a nice shout out here, Kurt Moody, who's _, at DET_guru_Kurt with a K on Twitter. He created this group that he knew were collectors. He knew that had been in some of my breaks, had been in a couple of his breaks. And we just started this conversation through direct messages on Twitter. And it just became called the Hobby Family, NPB, actually, Nonprofit Breaks Hobby Family, because awesome. Kurt and I would break at our cost. We figure out what the cost was of our box or the case or whatever it was that we were getting. And then we'd split up and price the break according to what it was our cost, plus whatever we'd need to add for shipping and supplies. And we would put it out to our friends first. I still do this sometimes. If I'm going to post a break, I'm going to let my buddies know, hey, I want to share this product with you. Who wants what before, I post it to the public, or before I put it on my website. Sometimes I'll do that. And sometimes I will just put it up first come, first serve. But the Hobby Family grew out of that. And, there's, 15 or 16 of us that we become really good friends. We haven't met each other we haven't all met each other in person, but there have been occasions where we have. It was really, really important for us to have this group of guys to talk to share stories with, to share baseball cards with, and really anything through the pandemic. I mean, once we hit March 2020 and everything shut down and people were working from home and the hobby exploded. And as you know, with values of cards and the difficulty that people had in finding product, I made some good contacts in the field and made it a little bit easier for me to get products sometimes. So people did look to me to do a break because they wanted to get their Bowman cards, or they wanted to be in the next, Topps Inception break or whatever it was. So that's kind of where the hobby family grew out of, and we're all very close. Getting to know those guys so well has actually allowed me to roll some of them into my Prospects 1500 staff, where some of those guys are correspondents for the site too. So it's just really the best of both worlds for me, where they're friends, they're actually correspondents on the site, and confidants in a lot of things in life for me.
That's awesome. And yeah, I was just about to bring that up with the Prospects 1500, an excellent website, an excellent resource for anyone listening. I can't recommend highly enough. I was fortunate enough to contribute a couple of articles last year, and it's a website I still check every day because you guys put out great stuff, especially now in January, putting out the top 50s. But how did you first get started in it? You came back in 2000 after a little bit of a break, and you got into cards, but I imagine you were still into baseball before that. So how did you start moving towards the prospect side then, the younger guys, the minor leagues?
That all started as I got into dynasty leagues, and I've been playing fantasy baseball since I was a freshman in college. I was at Syracuse, and a couple of my buddies wanted to do this, and we had a draft, and we did our league, and we had to, check I'm going way back, Mike. I mean, I'm talking the spring of 1990, the spring of 1991.
So you're not using ESPN.com there.
No, I mean, we were using USA Today, and I'm using the Monday edition of USA Today because it would have the stats from the previous week, or it would have the cumulative stats, so that we would be able to know how our players did during the previous week by paper and pencil and erasers, and doing everything on paper for our league. So as the years go on, and I've gotten into other keeper leagues, I've been in a league with some buddies and former coworkers since 99, 2000, and that league's still going. But I got into dynasty and started to learn about prospects. I think it was around 2008, 2009. I know it was around then because we had moved out here to Western Massachusetts in 2007. And I remember my first kind of prospect draft was in the sunroom here at my home in Western Mass in Longmeadow. So I had to do a little research and find I had never done this before. How do I know I've got to fill in 10 spots on a minor league roster? I didn't know any of these guys. So I was looking at, Baseball America. I was trying to find some things online, and there weren't as many pay sites back then as there are now. So I found a few things and put together a list, and I had some names. So I started to get into that aspect of fantasy baseball and the future and who's coming. Maybe it's 3-4 years away, but it might be cool to have this guy on my roster. And this is actually before I was ever into like Bowman and first Bowman cards. Sure. For prospects. That comes a couple years later. So that's kind of where the whole prospecting thing started. And I remember some of those names in my draft that first year that I did it. And it was like Jason Hayward, Mike Moustakas. Those are two I remember having on my roster.
Not bad picks.
I thought I did pretty well with those two anyway, back then, before they were ever rookies. So fast forward to 2014, and I got the opportunity to write a little bit for a website called Dynasty Sports Empire. And this is just all on the side because I have a full-time job. I'm an account manager for a media company here in Western Massachusetts. So on the side, I'm, doing my fantasy baseball, my card collecting, and I wanted to do a little bit of writing. So this site was allowing me to do some writing for Red Sox articles. They had this forum. It was like a message board. And there were a couple things about minor league baseball and some prospects, but not much. So I talked them into letting me kind of head up the minor league baseball section of the forum. And I tried to get some guys from my dynasty leagues or other people I knew around the country to fill some spots. Hey, you're down in Missouri. Can you want to cover the Cardinals minor league system? And I knew a guy that was out in Denver, a college roommate of mine, and he was interested in covering the Rockies. So I put together a really small crew, and we did a few posts on this forum. Yeah, very, very minor. And long story short, it just didn't last. It wasn't my site. And I had some other ideas and aspirations and dreams to kind of do this on my own.
Sure.
So, I talked to a few guys. I said, we're going to put together this blog. And a year later, 2015, and I registered something on Blogspot because I think it was a great platform to use because they were owned by Google. And I'm like, oh, it's going to have great SEO. And then we never did anything. And it just kind of went away. And then another year goes by, and I really wanted to get something off the ground. I had this idea to have 5 guys help me out, and each of us like drafted 200 prospects. So we'd have like 1,000 prospects that we were able to rank. And it was maybe prospects 1001, I was going to call it. And I think that's what I registered the Blogspot as. And then it didn't happen again. And then finally I said, you know what, I've got to get something off the ground. And I decided on this format. I didn't know the platform it was going to be, but I was going to get 30 people, each of them to pick an organization, each of them to rank 50 minor leaguers in their organization. And if we had 30 times 50, it was going to be 1,500 prospects that were ranked. I didn't know any other site that was doing that. And I said, God damn it, this is going to be Prospects 1,500. We got it launched, and that was December of 2016. And I said, in January, every day, we're going to drop a new team's top 50. And we had some hurdles and some obstacles.
Sure.
That first January of 2017, but we did it. I look back at those now. You can look, they're on the site. And we've just been going since. There's been a lot of turnover. I've had a lot of great writers that have started out at Prospects 1,500, and now they're working on other sites and have gone on to work for baseball teams, and some others are completely out of the industry, but that have had a lot of great people. And that was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So now this month is our 6th year of doing our annual top 50s in January. So that's the story of how it started. It was from an idea to getting it off the ground. And the biggest thing about the website Prospects 1,500 right now is the team of people that I have working and writing for the site. And we just love it. And that's why we do it.
Absolutely. I mean, you guys have such a great experience. Like I said, whenever I'm looking at prospects, you guys are one of the websites I check, because I mean, the top 50 of any team, like that gives you a good chance. Like if a guy's not on that list, it's a little, then I'm kind of like, okay, if Prospects 1,500 doesn't have these guys, then I probably am not going to put them on my list either.
And I realize that so many of these prospects on these lists are never going to make the major leagues, unfortunately.
Of course. Yeah.
But once in a while, you're going to have those nuggets that you find. There might be a guy that's down in our tier 4, tier 5 that you like, and you maybe take a flyer on him in a dynasty league, and then they become a great, pop-up prospect, and then boom, then all of a sudden you've got a Juan Soto on your team or a Ronald Acuna Jr. They were not the highest profile minor league prospects when they first came onto these lists.
No, absolutely. And the other thing I hear is, I mean, you're starting, you're stopping, you're trying different formats. You said you got turnover, is especially when it comes to prospecting, is it's a lot of work. I mean, digging up to find these guys, not just writers, but like to players, like finding where the next star is going to come from. Like the guys you said, they kind of came out of nowhere. And how do you, as a collector, as an evaluator, find out that kind of stuff? And I feel like that's something that some people might not anticipate when they first jump in. I myself included, I kind of thought, oh, I'll look at a couple of top 100 lists and I'll buy those guys. But if you really want to find the sleepers, you really got to look beyond that stuff.
And you look at one top 100 overall list, then you look at another one, and then you look at another one. They're all going to be different.
Oh yeah.
So, you're going to have a consensus number of players that are included, but you're going to get so many differences. I will, like, if you don't mind, I'll just share my process.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear
how I come about my Red Sox top 50 prospects. I've been very lucky to work with a friend of mine. His name's Ben Wilson. Ben lives out in New York State. So Ben and I collaborate on our Red Sox list. And I'm not sure exactly how he does his, but for me, I actually take a pad of paper and a pen, and I jot down every single Red Sox prospect that I can think of off the top of my head in no particular order. And I write them all down on this list. Sometimes I come up with 37. Sometimes I come up with 64. Every year is different. And I'm thinking back to my last top 50 list, or I'm thinking back to players that were maybe included in our prospects of the week during the season, just however I remember them. Or I remember literally who was in Bowman draft this year on the Red Sox. And that helps me remember 4 or 5 guys. So I make my list on paper, and then I check out and I look back at my mid-season list, and I look back at my last January list. So I kind of have an idea where the players were, maybe trending up or down. Then I look at some other sites. There are so many other good prospect sites out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll look at other sites and kind of make my notes. So how do I get these guys in order? Well, after I've looked at all those sites, I put them into my spreadsheet. All right, tier 1, these are the top guys. They're going to be perennial all-stars. We've got 3 right now. Tier 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, how many am I going to do in tier 2? Tier 3, these are going to be guys that have an average expectation of making the major leagues and being a contributor. Okay, so majority of our lists on the website and our top 50s, the majority of players should be in tier 4 and 5 because there's so many question marks. So then I'll figure out and I'll get through my ranking down through 50. And then I've got another handful I always like to add on. Here's the next 10 or here's the next 12, just list some other names because I wanted to be comprehensive. Ben goes in and does his same thing. He ranks his. And then we have a call and we talk and we look at it together and we kind of average them together and we tweak where we need to tweak and we move them around. And then we finally have come up with our overall top 50 ranking that's put together by both of us. And we decide, all right, he's going to write so-and-so player blurbs for these players. I'm going to write the ones for these players, and then boom, and we're done. And it's great.
Sounds like you've come a long way since that first baseball pack and not knowing a single player on the Red Sox.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, while we're on that topic, I pulled up prior to our talk a couple of the top Red Sox prospects, and I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these guys. I got 6 players here who have been ranked in your top 50. Mostly one, I think the lowest ranking of any of these guys was Blaze Jordan at 11 at midseason last year, I believe. And I just wanted to go through with you real quick and kind of Goldilocks this thing. And I'll give you the current 28-day average of their first Bowman Chrome auto. And for the listeners, I'm using that because that's generally the most sought after card and tends to hold the most value. And I would like you to tell me your thoughts, whether it's too hot, too cold, or just right. So how's that sound?
Yeah, that's good. You want me to about the price, the current
Yes.
price.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So we'll start off with a guy that I know you are a big fan of. I've heard you talk a lot about this guy, both on podcasts. I've seen you write about him and talk about him on Twitter. Jarren Duran, whose first Bowman Chrome Auto appeared in 2020 Bowman and reached a peak of 263. That was the high price on eBay when he first debuted back in July. But since then, it's dropped off. It's dropped off, unfortunately, a little bit, down to the current average of $90.24. So for Jarren Duran, first Bowman Chrome Auto, $90.24. Too hot, too cold, or just right?
Too hot.
Too hot.
Too hot. I love Jarren Duran, and I have I've not pulled one of these autos, and I don't know that I've purchased one of these autos. I've pulled in several from trades. I've been lucky to get some in trades. I have purchased a couple of really nice autos, but they've been like variations, an image variation auto or a Mojo auto. So not necessarily that 2020 Bowman first Chrome auto, but I think, release week helium, every single product and every single player, right when the new product comes out, if you want the card right then and there, you're going to pay a premium. So his cards were so high at the time when they came out, March, April 2020, whenever that was. And I said, I'm not going to buy this card for $150.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to buy the card for $100. I love Jarren Duran. I'm going to wait. And I think it's a $50 to $75 card. And you're telling me that the average right now is still around 90. I think it's still a little high.
Interesting. Because I'm surprised to hear it, because I knew you were a big fan of Jarren Duran. So I'm curious to know how much of that is you as a baseball evaluator versus you as just a Jarren Duran fan.
I think it's a little bit of evaluator in me.
Yeah.
As a Jarren Duran fan, I mean, I'd love him to be the starting center fielder for the Sox on opening day. I don't think he's going to be, especially with them signing or trading to bring back Jackie Bradley Jr. and with the reports that they are the front runners for Suzuki. I don't think he's going to be the starting center fielder. I do think he will have more time in the majors this year. He's got a learning curve, and I'm still a huge fan. And if I was just a huge fan and if I was just a collector, then I'd pay $90.24 or more to have that auto. But I think it just has to go down a little bit.
Speaking of release week premium,
right?
The helium and all that, the newest Red Sox top prospect to debut in Bowman 2021 Bowman draft, Marcelo Meyer, the Red Sox #1 draft pick this year, the highest draft pick they've had in decades, and his current first Bowman Chrome auto is just a shade under $500, $489.08. Tell me, Scott, too hot, too cold, or just right?
Too hot.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
So I was in Denver this past summer for All-Star Weekend. I was there with some Prospects 1500 crew and my son, and we got to go to the Futures game and Home Run Derby. And they actually had the MLB draft during All-Star Weekend this year for the first time, because it's usually in past years, it's been in June down at like the MLB Network studios. So they did it in Denver at the convention center in a special theater. It was a theater in the convention center. And and the convention center is also where they held the Play Ball Park, which is what most people remember as Fan Fest,
Okay.
All-Star Fan Fest. Now they call it Play Ball Park. Well, I happened to be roaming around the convention center with with my media pass for the day. So I just kind of happened to go over to where that arena, the theater was. And I went into the theater and they were just getting set up for the draft because it was the day before. And so the MLB Network crew was on one stage and they were sitting there talking, and the ESPN crew was on another stage sitting there talking, but they had these monitors around the room. And on the monitor, they were putting up pictures of players and team logos. And I have a photo of Marcelo Meyer on one of these monitors with the Pittsburgh Pirates logo
Oh no.
next to it. And I'm thinking that's a spoiler. Like, it's already been determined.
That's it. You got the scoop.
This is the graphic that's going to go out. Yeah, I could have tweeted it out and all that stuff and said, look what's going to happen. But, I didn't want to jeopardize any type of credentials that I had or anything.
Sure.
So, I just sent the picture to a couple of friends. Hey, look at this. He should have been the first overall prospect taken in that draft.
Yeah.
That's
what a lot of people were saying.
So he drops to 4th. The Red Sox get him. I'm so happy that they got Meyer. And I knew that, God, my breaks for Red Sox and Bowman draft are going to be so expensive.
Well, that's
I've opened up some draft. I've been in some breaks with friends, and I got a decent number of Meyer cards, but I haven't hit an auto yet. I just want one auto. Give me a base auto. That's all I want, but I'm not going to pay $500 for it. You know what? I'm not going to pay $150 for it.
Really?
I'm going to wait. No, I'm not going to. I'll make a trade with someone to pull in a really nice Meyer auto. I pulled a really beautiful they've got these really cool lava parallels this year.
Yeah, that's new. Those are sweet.
I pulled an aqua lava Marcelo Meyer first Bowman serial numbered to 199. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing.
Just not an auto. It's not an auto. And then I got a Marcelo Meyer numbered autograph out of Bowman's Best, but it's a brand that their autographs just don't hold up to the value of the flagship first Bowman. But I'll get one of these days. I think $489 is too hot.
Yeah, and to the hobby's credit, I suppose, its draft was released very recently, and that always happens with the hottest prospect in that product. No matter whether it's draft, Bowman Chrome, for the first few months, really, in my personal philosophy is don't buy any autos until 3 months after release, because up until that point, those prices are just going to be crazy. And I think that's definitely the case for Meyer right now. Let me ask you, you said you wouldn't pay 500, you wouldn't pay 100. What would be a target price for you for Marcelo Meyer?
I think 100's a good price.
100?
Yeah.
I would be happy with that too.
Yeah.
Keeping on track with Red Sox first round draft picks, Tristan Casas, 2018 Bowman draft, currently averaging 154.19 for his first Bowman Chrome auto. Too hot, too cold, or just right?
Too hot.
Still.
I'll pay 100 to 125 for Marcelo Meyer. I think Casas, although I have Casas ranked ahead of Meyer on our top 50, slightly ahead. I almost asked Ben if we wanted to do a 1A, 1B, but we decided to stick Casas at number 1, closer to the majors. Definitely has proven himself at a really good, not an amazing year, 2021, but he destroyed some AA hitting. He did really well in the Olympic trials and then the Olympics for the USA team. Struggled a little bit, but he only played in a few games at AAA. So we have him as our, future first baseman. He's our number 1 guy. Meyer is right there, a lot younger, maybe some better tools. And that's why I would probably pay a little bit more for Meyer's cards. I would say that a great range to get a Casas first Bowman auto would probably be, $85 to $105 maybe. I don't have one. I do have a red. Check this out. a first Bowman Tristan Casas red refractor, numbered 5 of 5. It might even be worth more than an auto.
Oh yeah. I mean, 5 of 5, especially once you start getting down into those lower ones. I'm not going to ask you, just in case your wife listens to this podcast, I'm not going to ask you how much you paid for it, but
I didn't. That's the beautiful thing of the hobby family.
No way.
We trade with each other.
That's awesome.
And I have a buddy who sent me, he pulled the card and he sent it to me. And I think I maybe sent him a couple, mega boxes of Bowman or something. I mean, it was just a nice, friendly deal.
That's awesome. And I love hearing that, because as much as, a lot of my focus is around the values of these cards, I do feel like trading is fallen by the wayside a little bit in the hobby, and people do tend to focus a little bit too much on the dollar signs. So that actually makes me really happy to hear that such a high value card was just
I will agree with
traded.
you on that, Mike. I think trading has really fallen by the wayside. And you know what? If you look at any box of cards, they are called trading cards.
Good point. That is an excellent point. I love it. So for this next guy, I'm actually very interested to hear your thoughts on this next guy, because full transparency, I bought a couple of his cards last off season. Figuring he was at the time, he was a top 100 Red Sox prospect. And I figured, top 100 Red Sox, I think I paid around $40 per card, which at the time I felt was pretty good. He went up a little bit in preseason, but since then he's come back down. Jeter Downs in 2017 draft, currently averaging 34.28 for his first BC auto, after hitting an average high of just under $60 in July. Jeter Downs, 34.28, too hot, too cold, or just right?
That's Goldilocks, just right, I think.
You think so?
I'm a little down on Downs. He really, really struggled in AAA. He didn't hit 200. Showed a little bit of life in the Arizona Fall League. He was hot there for a little while, hoping that can translate into AAA this coming spring. And if he has a good season, maybe he's in line for a promotion to the majors at some point. Especially if there are any injuries. But that 2017 Bowman Draft Downs card, he's in a Cincinnati Reds uniform, I believe.
Yeah. He was a first round pick of the Reds back in 2017, I believe. And that actually, for some people, it has a pretty big effect on whether or not they're going to buy the card. They want the card of the player in the team that they debut for, or in the uniform they debut for.
Oh, and that means nothing to me. I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, I understand people have their vices, and listen, if I'm an Andrew Benintendi fan right now and I live in Kansas City and he's my favorite player, I'm not going to not buy his first card because he's in a Red Sox uniform. I mean, it's just, that's the way it was. And it goes both ways. I was a big Yoan Moncada fan and wanted to get a bunch of his first cards. And then they made the trade and he goes, and I have a shirt with his name on it, and they make the trade and he goes to the White Sox. So, well, all right. So I'm not that big of a Moncada fan collector anymore, but I still do like Benintendi, even though he's not on the Red Sox. And, I actually just had a friend of mine send me a beautiful numbered 3 of 10 Benintendi card that arrived today. It was kind of a tip for me pulling a really big card for him and a buddy. So he actually sent this to me as a tip, and he's like, I don't know if you're a Benintendi fan anymore, but the card was so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
That's a nice
So
tip.
I think around 40, maybe a little under 40. You said 34 and change. That's
right around there.
Right for Jeter Downs. I think the next two guys are a little too much for me, but you can
all right. Well, on that note, we'll move into the next two guys. First one up I've got is Nick York in 2020 draft. And I think Nick York is interesting because when the Red Sox picked him, people weren't on board with that pick. They didn't know what the Red Sox were doing. And even in the hobby, I've got it here that as late as July of 2021, his average price was $67.69, just under $70. Now, however, though, that's up to $221.31. So I think I know which way you're leaning with this, but I'll ask the question anyways. Too hot, too cold, or just right?
Yeah, it's too hot. He had an amazing year. He has done wonders for his prospect status. He is, I hear people saying he's one of the best pure hitters in the minor leagues. I think easily a top 50 overall prospect. He's in our tier one. He's ranked third on our top 50 Red Sox list. I've seen him up into the low teens, early 20s on overall top prospect lists. Nick York, I did not know what the Sox were doing in the 2020 draft either. I'd never heard of him, some kid out of high school. And well, hey, almost 2 years later, look, he's the one that's laughing at all
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah. Now it
He
looks like
put
they
up
know what they're doing. Who would have
put up
thought?
some, yeah, I mean, yeah. So whoever was running that draft, and they did their due diligence, and he's a gem in their system right now. I hope they don't rush him. Nick York might be a guy that makes it to Portland, and he actually comes through Hartford, in my neck of the woods here. And I don't want him to be any further along than AA this year. There's no need to rush him.
Sure. Yeah. And I actually noticed when I was going through your rankings that at midseason you had him at number 9, which is still really good. But now, like you said, you've got him up to number 3. I mean, 6 spots. That's a pretty big jump right there.
It is, especially in the top. I mean, when you get down in that lower tier 4, tier 5, and the guys are ranked between like 25 and 50, and go from 49 up to 32, it's not really that big a jump, because
Right.
it's still kind of all down in the lower tiers. But to go from tier 3, ranked 9th, all the way up to tier 1, that's a big jump, and he deserved it after what he's shown in the last year.
Yeah, that definitely speaks to him as a player.
I
And
think his autograph is probably a good $100 to $150 card right now. I think 221's a little high.
I do feel like he's benefiting a lot from hype right now. And, to an extent, that's what a lot of the prospect card collecting is hype. But yeah, hopefully it'll come back down, or, for who's ever buying it right now, maybe it'll go up. You never know. Sometimes these card prices are crazy. But speaking of guys who made big jumps, the final guy on this list also made a big jump in your ranking, 6 spots from 11 to 5, actually. And that is Blaze Jordan, the darling of 2021 Bowman Chrome. I remember when he first came out, people were paying crazy money. I think he was up above 250, and I wasn't quite seeing it. I didn't really understand it. High school hitter, big bat, obviously, but prices have fallen down since then to the current average of 157.60 over the last 28 days. So about $100 drop off from his first debut. But is that too hot, too cold, or just right?
It's a little bit too hot for me. No, Mike, isn't it right? Was it 2021 Bowman? I think he was in 2021
Yes.
Bowman. He and Austin Martin
right.
were the two big names.
Yes, you are right.
So I think that a little bit too high for him. I was down on Blaze Jordan a little bit with my midseason ranks. We kind of didn't know. We hadn't seen any minor league baseball in 2020. And that's when he was drafted with Nick York. New York was the first round pick. I think Blaze was their 3rd round pick. And I don't think they had a 2nd round pick, if I can recall, if I remember correctly. So just wasn't sure. And he came out ablazing. How about that, for pun intended?
I'm sure it's never been used.
In rookie ball. He did great in rookie ball last year in the Florida Complex League. So people are back on him in the hobby. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
You strike out 4 times in a game, and I bet his value goes down for $50. But the hobby is so fickle that you put up some great numbers, and then people are going to be all over the card, and then you're going to have to buy high.
that's just the way it goes. Like it's kind of with these prospects, a lot of it is just riding the wave of these guys, or like you said, they hit a couple of home runs in 1 week and their prices skyrocket, or like you said, they strike out 4 times in a game, and all of a sudden, you're picking up cards for pennies on the dollar, just
Right.
about. So it is very much surfing that wave of hype going up and down, and you kind of got to have a little bit of chutzpah to be able to keep it together at times.
Exactly.
So we just went through 6 of the Red Sox top prospects. How about you give me 3 hobby breakout players that you expect to see in 2022, whether they be Red Sox or anyone else breaking out in the hobby, which generally means fantasy as well. But who are you thinking might break out next season, assuming we
I'm
play?
just going to stick to the Red Sox if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because it's top of my mind. I think that a pitcher that not a lot of people know about that made it up to low A, Salem, last year, and probably would start there again this year, maybe get into high A, but he's only 19, and his name is Wilkelman Gonzalez, and he was a really big riser. He was number 33 in our midseason list, and we moved him up to number 10.
Wow.
On our current list. He does not have a first Bowman card yet, but sometimes you get a lot of these players. If he doesn't show up in 20, where are we? If he doesn't show
22.
up in 2022 Bowman, he could be in 22 Bowman Chrome later in the summer. But I would watch out for Wilkelman Gonzalez, another guy I really like. Excited to see. I think he could be in Double A this year. He was in Low A last year for Milwaukee, but he was drafted. He was drafted in this. Oh, he's in the current product in 2021 Bowman draft, and that's Alex Benelas. He came over in the Jackie Bradley Jr. Trade with Bradley. They got Benelas and they got David Hamilton, and they sent Hunter Renfroe to Milwaukee. Benelas is he's a lefty, power hitting guy, and he had over 1,000 OPS in Low A at his pro debut last year. So I'm excited for him. He's a name that I think people should definitely know about. If you want to get his first cards, he's on the Brewers in the current 2021 Bowman draft release. But he's coming in the Red Sox system. And then another guy who I actually didn't know a lot about, and he's already 25 years old, and he should probably also be in Double A Portland this year. He pitched last year in High A Greenville, and that's Brandon Walter. And Brandon Walter, I think, was Boston's minor league pitcher of the year last year. And so come on, Bowman, Tops, let's get some Brandon Walter cards also. You know what, Mike? A lot of people will say, oh, he's a pitcher.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
He's a pitcher. His card's not going to be worth anything. I don't care. I want to collect the cards of the players that I like.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the way it should be, right? Collect what makes you happy.
You know what? It's not going to be worth as much. So all right. So what? I know some of it all has to do with the price of cards, and yeah, you used to be able to get a box of Bowman jumbo cards for $120. Now it's $370, $385, $400 for a jumbo box of Bowman cards, and you're going to get 3 autos. And if one of those autos isn't a big name, oh my God, I'm not going to make my money back. It's not going to be, well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing that sucks with the hobby now, is that some of these prices and their product prices are so crazy and outrageous. But that's why I do my breaks the way I do, is to split up the cost among friends and among other collectors in the hobby, and we share the cost of the cards. So I'm not on the hook for that $400 box.
Absolutely.
I'll pay in for what, the Red Sox are priced at, and I'll get all the Red Sox cards out of it, or we'll do another format. But yeah, so I can understand why a lot of the hobby will say, oh, stay away from pitcher autos because they're not going to be worth anything. Well, there are pitchers that do make the Hall of Fame. And if you look back at their rookie cards, they're, can you get a Nolan Ryan rookie card for a really good deal right now? Probably not, if it's in, great condition. But,
Right.
whereas anyone back in the 60s saying, well, he's a pitcher, so don't get his card. No.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. And while we're on that topic, we could spend an entire another podcast on this, but since you just brought it up, the announcement was just made yesterday. David Ortiz, Hall of Famer, Big Papi, only one inducted this year. Your thoughts?
I was a little upset that, well, first of all, congratulations to David Ortiz, one of my favorite players of all time. I believe well-deserved. Some people have said, well, he showed up on the Mitchell report. There's definitely, links to steroids. Nothing was ever proven. He took so many tests after that when the system was designed with all the rules and never a positive test ever. So I have no issues with that. I'm not being just a biased Red Sox fan. He was one of the most clutch hitters ever, definitely in postseason, and I'm so happy. I was actually, my wife asked me last night when we were watching the announcement if I was crying, and I said, yeah, I do have a tear in my eye, like Ric Flair with a tear in my eye. I was at his very last game ever. It was when they lost to Cleveland in the playoffs. And he was out on the field, waving to the fans after that game. It was pretty upsetting because they had been eliminated.
Right.
I saw my team eliminated from the playoffs, and it was his last game ever.
Oh, that's a gut punch.
So really, really happy. I was upset that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens didn't make it. I knew that they weren't going to make it when they were hovering around 75, 76% right before the announcement came on TV, because I know that there's about half of the ballots that weren't released.
Right.
And players always drop. I mean, Ortiz dropped from like 82 down to 77% with the last 50% of ballots that weren't made public. So I just, I think that Bonds and Clemens also deserve to be there. I was kind of upset about that.
Scott, I want to thank you for coming on. Before I let you go, I want to ask you, got anything you want to plug? Prospects 1500, Scotty Ball Game Breaks, anything you want to throw out there for the listeners?
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, Scotty Ball Game Breaks. If you actually follow me on Twitter at Scotty, SCOTTY _ball game, I will tweet a lot about baseball cards and the hobby. Among other things, you'll see Syracuse stuff from me. You'll see Western Mass stuff. You'll see sometimes NASCAR and pro wrestling, but I will use the hashtag Scotty Ball Game Breaks for my breaks when I do them. And if I'm trying to, get some people to fill them. I just did post one today. We're recording this on Wednesday, January 26th, I think it is.
Yep.
And so I have a Bowman Draft first edition 50-pack box. It's been 2 months. It finally got to me today. There was a whole big runaround, but finally arrived. So I'm breaking that box. I'm doing it by the pack so people can actually pick their pack position. I've got another case of Bowman Draft I'm sitting on. I've got Top Series 2 coming next month. So there'll be a lot of fun Scotty Ball Game Breaks if people want to give it a shot and, grab a team or grab a spot in whatever the format is. That would be cool. On Prospects 1500, we're rounding out our top 50 month with the NL West, with final four to come this week and this weekend. We're going to have a really cool top 50 from Max Arterburn about the top 50 prospects that don't have a Bowman First autograph card. So that's going to be a really cool list on January 31st. And in February, we will be putting out our site organization rankings. So which minor league systems are the best? And I think we actually go from 30 all the way down to number one, the best one. It was one of our biggest articles last year when we did it for the first time. And we do this whole collaboration of staff to get to our rankings on which systems. It'll be interesting to see where the Red Sox system comes in. They were somewhere, I think, around 20 out of 30 last year, and maybe they'll move up a little bit this year. So that's coming up. We will also be working with several minor league baseball teams to do we do this social media player profile series during spring training. So for example, we work with the Hartford Yard Goats, and our Rockies writer will put together a list of 10 players that could see time in Double-A Hartford this coming season. Doesn't necessarily mean these players are on the Rockies top 50. Some of them will be, but some of them might not be. But these are just players that could see time in Double-A Hartford, and the Yard Goats push it out on their social media each day. So it's really awesome. Really cool to be tied in with them. And we'll work with other teams. We've worked with the Montgomery Biscuits, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, the Biloxi Shuckers, and several other teams in minor league baseball. And I'm looking to add to that list this coming spring. So a lot of fun things to look out for on Prospects 1500. Follow us on Twitter at Prospects 1500, and on the web it's prospects1500.com.
Oh, that's awesome. Sounds like a lot of good stuff to look forward to. That minor league thing sounds awesome. I mean, that's such a great tie-in. It's such a natural tie-in also. I'll definitely be keeping my eyes open for that, as I hope all the listeners will be as well. With that, Scott, thanks so much for coming on. I had a great time. I think we had some great conversation just about collecting, about players, about prospects, and a lot to look forward to in the future. So thank you so much for coming on.
Dugan, can you sign my husband's baseball card for me?
Hey, great to meet you.
All right, welcome back, and thanks again to Scott for coming on. I really enjoyed getting the perspective of a seasoned collector who's been so involved in the community for a long time and really still kind of brings some of those old school values to the modern hobby, because it's something that keeps us all in the community sense. You come in because you get addicted to ripping packs and finding the next hot guy, and getting with the players, finding the players that you enjoy, but you really stick around for the community. It's a community through cards, and to hear about that in this hobby family is really cool. And I look forward to talking more and delving deeper into some of those topics that we discussed on future episodes. In that vein, I'd like to dive into a couple of things that we did talk about in this episode's interview. First of all, let me explain where I was getting those card values from during the Goldilocks segment. Like I said in the interview, I was using a player's first Bowman Chrome autograph card, and I used that card for a very specific reason. I tend to believe that's the card that holds the most value and that is the most sought-after card of a prospect. It's, in a sense, a modern-day rookie card. It's the first time a player appears in a licensed set with major league team logos and uniforms, and even though the players are photoshopped into the uniform, it's still the first time the collectors are getting to see what the future might look like. So it's very exciting. It's very fun. It's fun to see these young guys before they show up in the major leagues. So you get a good sense of the market through the first Bowman Chrome cards. And I use the autographs because those tend to hold the most value, I think, and they're the most sought after. And for me personally, it adds a little bit to the card. It's got an autograph on it. It's something tangible. It's something that provides a little bit more of a connection to the player and to the game. So that's why I tend to use the autograph cards. And the autograph card is really a good indication of the market overall, because if a player is selling a lot of autograph cards, you can bet that they're selling a lot of non-autographed cards too. So it's a good indicator of the overall market as well, in addition to the autograph market. I'm also using the player's base autograph. That means it's unnumbered, it's not colored, and it's not graded. And I do that because what I'm looking for when I'm looking up these values is what is the least amount of money I should expect to spend when I begin collecting a player? What's the floor to get in at? Because that's generally what we're all looking to know, right? What's the least amount of money I should expect to spend on a player? Obviously, if you want to go into the graded and serial numbered cards, those values are going to go up, but you should at least have an idea of what to expect going into collecting a player. So that's why I use the base unnumbered, ungraded version of those autograph cards. And finally, I'm getting most of the values from eBay. I know that there's a lot of other marketplaces out there. There's a lot of places to buy and sell baseball cards, but I use eBay because it's the most widely recognized and widely used of those marketplaces. I'm not saying it's the best marketplace, but I'm saying that's where most of those transactions get done. So generally, if what a card is going for on eBay is going to be about the same as it's going anywhere else, whether that's on Twitter, on the forums, or elsewhere. So for future episodes, whenever I'm referencing the value of a card or the value of a player, that's what I'm going off of. That's what I mean. I mean a base, ungraded version of a player's first Bowman Chrome autograph card on eBay. Another thing I wanted to dive into was prospecting pitchers, because I found it very interesting that 2 of Scott's 3 breakout stars were pitchers. And pitchers generally don't get a lot of love in the hobby, and not without good reason. They generally are much more susceptible to injury, they're much more volatile, they're much harder to project than batters are. In a part of the hobby where it's already you're already dealing with a lot of instability, with a lot of uncertainty, collectors generally don't want to compound that by adding pitchers. However, that's not to say they aren't without value. It just takes a different approach. And let me share with you what my approach is that I've kind of just started working on recently. I call it the venture capitalist approach, because instead of putting all of my money into one player and hoping he succeeds, I'm taking smaller chunks of money spread across more players and recognizing that the majority of them are going to flame out. So instead of putting $100 into, say, Jackson Jobe, for an example, I'm taking $5, $6, $7 and picking up guys who were drafted in the tail end of the first round, in the supplemental rounds, in second, third, fourth rounds, or guys who were signed at a very young age out of the Dominican or Cuba or what have you. That way, I'm kind of spreading the risk out a little more. So I don't need one guy to do so great. I need one guy to maybe do pretty good. I don't need him to be an all-star. I don't need him to be a superstar. I need, 2 or 3 guys to be front-end starters or back-end starters, or even just starters, just to develop a little bit of a fan base, get a little bit of appreciation, because my goal is to spend less than $10 on all of these guys. So if I'm able to then turn around and in a couple of years flip them for $15, $20, $30, that's a win right there. It's not flashy. It might not be as sexy as some of the other batters, but it creates a sustainable collection that keeps going. Now, this is something I just started doing, so I can't tell you if it works or not, but be sure to tune in to future episodes to find out, and I'll definitely keep you updated on that and a couple of other strategies that I've developed to identify and buy the next up-and-coming prospect. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. I hope you'll join me for future episodes. I plan on releasing a new one every other week, so 2 episodes a month. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review, and let me know what you think. Let me know maybe what your strategy for collecting pitchers is, maybe a couple of guys who you would like me to talk about on the show. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter. My personal handle is @MJRSportsCards, and be sure to follow the show on Twitter as well. That's TinStopPod, @TinStopPod. Thanks for tuning in. This has been episode 1 of There Is No Such Thing as a Prospect podcast. So long.